Hello, everybody. Yeah, it's the ugly bear. Yeah, I know. It's the old bear with the old bear's den of Bigfoot. I'm getting looks right now because I said I'm ugly. My wife thinks I'm handsome. But anyway, neither. That's none of that. We're back again with another story. This comes from a subscriber, and I'm not giving his name. I'm just going to tell you this happened in uh, Kansas. I think this is it. Yeah, Kansas. Anyway, he starts off with he said, This is a serious subject about truly dangerous creatures, and people need to know what can happen to them. Uh, he's referring to a video that I did with the other researcher from here on that I'm with, my very good friend. And he says, What you old boys were saying in a 2 video series was more or less right on point with what I have been experiencing for the last 7 years or so. I was actually shocked a little that your information was so accurate, as usually most Bigfoot sites or channels are anything but. Anyway, let me tell you a little bit about the situation. I have spent most of my life in the outdoors. I love to hunt, fish, camp, and have been practicing wilderness survival since I was a young Boy Scout. The outdoors to me was like a huge playground. Recently, I have gotten to the point where I am camping and fishing again after everything that happened to him. He said, I live in the central Midwest. About 7 years ago, weird stuff started happening and has been happening since. Middle of January, on a cold, clear, wind still night, I heard what sounded like some moron with a baseball bat whacking a tree in my shelter belt. You know how on a cold and still night like that, sound gets amplified and loud. I literally thought some drunk or trespasser was out there trying to get shot. After the third time of getting woke up, I literally went out the back door and jacked around in my 870 pump and yelled that whoever it was better stop or I would come out there. The noise stopped, but this started a chain of events. Before this, Bigfoot, didn't even know the name Sasquatch back then, was only something that existed in cheap critter flicks. Yay! All sorts of odd things happen. Large, heavy stuff will get moved around the yard like a large trampoline for his kids. Occasionally, something would hit the back of the house. In some instances, hard enough to crack windows. Before I put a metal roof on the house, occasionally we could hear something heavy crawling around on the roof. Wonder what that was. He says one day we returned home late Saturday afternoon to find something had ripped the metal screen door and the wooden casing it was in completely off the rear of the house. Well, not completely. I take that back. It was the wooden casing that was screwed to the outside of the wall on the rear of the house. The top of the door was hanging at around a 50-degree angle from the vertical. I blamed the wind, though that stopped as soon as I saw that the casing had been nailed in with 16-penny nails that had been pulled through the 3/4 inch thick wood casing. For about 2.5 years, I think the things were trying to drive us off the property. That time span was somewhat of a nightmare. Just a list of events: I had to replace the door locks in both front and back because the square steel shafts inside had been twisted. My split wood piles would randomly get shoved or knocked over during the winter. I went through that time period not knowing what was causing the ruckus. At first, I thought it might be human activity. Quickly, I realized that it could not be humans, but had no clue as to what it could be, as there are no bears in this state at that point in time. Yet, that was the only thing I could think of strong enough and territorial enough to cause the kind of acts I was experiencing. This is happening on a farm in Kansas, of all places. Yep. Laugh it up. Yuck, yuck, yuck. I couldn't believe it either. This is prairie, wheatland, and pasture, not the mountains or deep woods. Bigfoot hadn't even entered into my consciousness as any kind of a possibility. I knew such things had to be happening to other people, so I started searching the net for the things that were happening to me, to see what was causing them. Time after time, Bigfoot, Bigfoot, Bigfoot. I couldn't accept it as possible, but I knew something odd was happening. One day in summer, I went out to find my dog, who was refusing to come when I called, which was very odd. He loves his me time and will come running whenever I call. I went looking for him. I was almost at the end of my shelter belt when I heard kind of a soft whoosh of something going through a patch of small evergreens growing wild past the end of the planted shelter belt, and I instinctively froze. Moving just my eyes to the right, I saw a huge gray humanoid shape smoothly stand and cross the 20 feet from the patch into the shelter belt. Proper. Besides the whoosh sound of evergreen on skin, I didn't hear anything else. What struck me was a couple of things. Why was it a dirty ash gray collar? Good question. Oh my word, is it huge? Easily 2 to 3 feet thick in the chest, and its shoulders were at least twice that in width, and just how tall it was compared to me, he couldn't explain. Those arms, I mean, words like massive just lose all meaning. That thing was at least 10 to 12 feet tall, being conservative in my estimate. It was a third as tall as the 50-plus-year-old evergreens of my shelter belt. If you have ever read that passage in the Bible where the scouts came out of Canaan and gave their report, I understand exactly how they felt. I felt like a grasshopper. I was only around 20 yards from this thing. All I could do was freeze and hold still. I never even thought to try to see its face, and all I saw was the profile as it walked a step and a half before it disappeared behind the 30 to 40 foot tall evergreens. A step and a half? Oh my gosh. Think how far that would be. 12, 6, 7 foot strides? My worldview at this time did a sudden 180. I knew what I saw, though I didn't want to accept it. To this day, I still wish it wasn't real. Since then, numerous more events have happened. I have found numerous tracks belonging to at least 4 individuals. Based on size of the tracks, I think the largest are the huge male I saw, 21-inch tracks. Another smaller male, 18 inches. A female, 16 inches. And a child, around 9 inches, found in a hollowed out spot under a cedar tree. These are all estimates based around my own shoe length. One thing I will note, only on one occasion have I ever heard them make a vocal call, a whoop. Whoop. I have never heard a scream or holler. I have only seen it the one time, but my daughter has seen it twice. The gray for sure, but she only saw the outline of one using the belt as cover to watch the kids play through a void in the foliage. My son saw one watching him through a window. That was fun. Trying to calm him down was next to impossible, and understandably so. He just kept screaming monster over and over while crying his eyes out. They're scaring the kids. I feel for this man because I've got kids of my own. Something scares my kids, it usually dies. That's just me. He goes on to say, seriously, at one point I thought I would snap. I almost decided to make these things extinct. For a while, it was that bad. One day, I had my oldest daughter out mowing the lawn with me, and she heard my voice calling to her from the belt, using a phrase I taught her for when I am hunting out in the belt for safety. If I am out hunting in the belt, I tell all my kids not to come into the belt, but to call out until they heard me call back with the words, "Come to me," indicating it was safe to approach Dad. She heard me yell, "Come to me," from the belt, yet she also knew I was inside the house, in the den. She came running to me in tears. Wow. He says, I was mad. That's probably an underestimate. That was the day that I almost went hunting these things. Now I know quite a few things about them. I do believe it is a family group of some sort. I know they wanted to hunt deer on the property. I found an ingenious hunting blind they made by hauling out a section of the outside cedars of my belt to where they could ambush deer following the outside of the belt. The structure, combined with a well-used deer trail, told me that, along with footprints and knuckle prints inside the hollowed-out area, cedar branches as thick as my forearm were just twisted off the trunks and neatly stacked, making a blind to the outside. Words do not do the blind justice. It was ingenious, and I have added the general design to my own survival knowledge, if that says anything. The opening at the back was placed so that the deer wouldn't even know it was in trouble until it was directly in front of the exit of the structure. Pretty smart creatures. Just several feet away from the hunter, according to where something had hunched over with its massive knuckles in the dirt, pushing off with one leg like a sprinter. One deep right foot tracked deeper at the front, shallow at the back, two roughly parallel knuckle prints several feet in front. Now, we've all seen that stance from us, from humans that go out and run track. When the gun goes off, they come out of that stance and they zoom right straight to almost to full speed. About 2 weeks ago, I have heard one talking out in the front yard, but it sounded like some kind of deep mumbling. My sister-in-law has heard them talking in the backyard on a couple of occasions, as well a couple of years back, also at night. But she claimed it sounded like Japanese samurai chatter. Classic Bigfoot. I heard something walking around the outside the back of the house by the living room once, making weird cooing sounds. Possibly sounding like a dove? So Bigfoot and dogmen do the same type of calls. Not good. He says he does disagree with us in one aspect from the video. He said, you know why you can find a bear, cougar, rabbit, raccoon, or deer in the woods? Ultimately, you can outsmart it. Pure and simple. We know to look for motion such as a twitch of an ear or tail or odd patterns or colors that indicate the presence of what we seek. These things are at least as smart as we are. At least as smart, if not more so. They find and avoid us like we try to find bear or deer, only we can't intentionally find them unless they want us to know they are there, accepting only chance accidents on their part. You've got a Bigfoot problem. And he sent me another email, but I'm not going to read that here. But basically, in the email, he said he has a truce with these things after confronting them across the road from his house while he was standing there with his shotgun. He racked a shell into the chamber out of in his shotgun and threw another shell in it and challenged them. And now that they leave him alone, they don't come over and bother him and do stuff at his house. So it's kind of a momentary or not momentary, but maybe a little bit of a truce right now. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for coming to the video, and we will see you on the next one. Y'all have a good day. Bye-bye.